Let me actually step back a little bit and talk about why are you here? Why are you here? You know, you're all in good jobs. I looked at the list of companies that you come from. It's a pretty impressive list. So you're all doing quite well. So why are you here and not in office? Today presumably is a working day. And the reason is, I think you realize that just like knowledge workers in the 90s had to learn how to use computers, exactly like that, all knowledge workers are having to learn how to analyze data. Why? Because the intuition-driven way of doing business is done. Business is not being done like that anymore, right? Now, because all business has come to be driven by technology, everything happens on computers, everything is measurable, everything is captured, and therefore, businesses that are taking data-driven decisions have a distinct competitive edge over those that aren't, and those that aren't are either dying or having to evolve rapidly, right? Second, the volume of data has grown so much that it is no longer possible to do it, to analyze it in the old ways, the way it was done earlier using Excel or ETL tools and relational databases. Traditional relational databases. So there's a new way of doing things and you're all here to learn the new way of doing things. Our belief is that it's only a matter of time before every knowledge worker on the planet will have to know something or the other about analytics. Just like every knowledge worker had to learn how to use computers. This is as fundamental a shift that is going on, and people who learn these things earlier will have an edge over those that don't. Eventually, everybody will have to. And this is actually being observed, and this is playing out every day. How many of you have heard about a company called Tesla? A lot of you, right? This wasn't the case 3 years back. Do you know what the market cap of Tesla is? Probably not. It's somewhere between 30 and 40 billion dollars. And it produces about 5,000, now probably about 7 to 8,000 cars. It's not a very large number, but it's still valued higher than many traditional car companies. Why do you think that is the case? Electricity is one, of course, right? But Tesla has fundamentally reinvented how automobiles function. I'll give you an example. A few years back, Car and Driver magazine, which is a very famous and influential car rating magazine, was testing the Tesla. Those of you that don't know, the Tesla's Model S was the first car which got 100 points on Consumer Reports. Okay, in the history of cars, never did anybody get 100 points, it got 100 points. So one of these magazines took it for a test drive, and they obviously will test all the parameters. They're trying to see how fast it goes. So it went maybe 140 miles per hour, whereas the stated maximum is 170. So they were given a phone number to call. So they called and said, you know, the car is not going at the advertised speed. What's going on? So the lady at the other end of the line said, could you please hold? And she put them on hold. So those of you that have lived in the US or engaged with US customer service, you know that once you get put on hold, it's a black hole, right? You don't know when you're going to get out of that. So it's a familiar feeling to everybody who's ever engaged with US customer service. Generally, Kenny G is playing in the background and you are going into a black hole. So these people were on hold, 1 minute passed, 2 minutes passed, and nobody puts these kind of influential magazines on hold for that long. They were getting pissed off, right? Because they're going to give you a rating that's going to decide a lot of consumer behavior. 2.5 minutes later, she comes back online and says, sir, could you please try now? So he said, what do you mean try now? Could you please drive the car now and see how fast it goes? So they were like, okay, that doesn't sound very, sensible, but we'll try it anyway. They did, and the car went 170 miles per hour. What do you think happened? There was a software change that was done over the air where a safety lock that was put got switched off. Things changed over the air. Now before that, nobody is used to things changing in your car without taking it into a garage. Car is not one of those things that things change without taking it to a garage. Your refrigerator is not something that changes without a mechanic coming to your house. Same with your TV, right? These are all things that don't change. Well, that's the change. Now they do, right? Every device that is electronic is getting connected. Earlier, only computing devices were connected. Now, any device that is plugged in, has electricity in it, is getting connected. You all would have heard about Internet of Things. If you haven't, go read about it, because that is another big change that is happening in the world, which means that every electrically connected device is producing data. Every human action we take, excuse me, is pretty much producing data. Any action that you take on a computing device is producing data. That's already happening. But going forward, any action you take interfacing with any connected device is going to produce data. And all of that data is going to be used to take decisions. Apple already patented technology where when you look at the phone is looking at you and figuring out your emotion. It's figuring out how you feel, and that's going to decide what recommendations you get, what ads you see. Okay. That has already been patented. The patent has been granted to Apple already, right? That is just one example. So every action that you take will lead to data. Those of you that think that you have any privacy left in your lives, forget about it. There is no more privacy. You can go live in Siberia if you want privacy. Otherwise, you just don't have any privacy anymore. Google knows you are here. Those of you that came by Uber, Uber knows you are here. Okay. Why is Uber valued at 60 billion? Is it because it's a taxi company? I don't think so. It is because Uber knows at what times of the day where you are. And it's only a matter of time before they connect the dots and figure out what you are doing. They know where your kids are going to study. They know where you work. They know where you travel. They know which cities you go to. They know where you go to vacation. Right? So these are all companies that have data about you. The value of a company today is directly proportional to how much they know about you. That's it. Let me give you an example of how this is actually changing business models. How many of you know about Rolls-Royce? What does Rolls-Royce make? Yes. So they make cars, sure. They also make aircraft engines, right? There's only a couple of companies, 2 or 3 companies that make aircraft engines. Rolls-Royce is one of them. What Rolls-Royce decided, well, first of all, one aircraft engine in one flight that lasts about 6 hours generates about 1 terabyte of data. Okay, it's full of sensors and it generates a lot of data. The biggest cost driver for an airline is fuel, right? Airlines' life and death depends on how fuel efficient they are. So every generation of planes get more fuel efficient. That's the primary driver of innovation in planes. What Rolls-Royce figured out is that they can do a better job of monitoring their engines and maintaining them. An airline only makes money if the plane flies. Whatever duration it sits on the ground is lost money for them, which is why everybody is working on how quickly they can turn around planes and put them in the air. How many hours in a day can they fly? How many days in a year can they fly? These are the metrics by which airlines live and die, right? So Rolls-Royce figured out that using the data that they are generating, they can actually operate the engines better and longer than what the airline itself can do. They can do predictive and preventive maintenance better than what the airline can do. Suppose a plane goes and lands in Kochi and has a problem there. It's much harder to fix it than fixing it in Delhi or Bombay or Hyderabad, where they actually have maintenance organizations. So they would rather figure out that an aircraft engine is likely to have a problem in the near future and fix it when it is in Hyderabad or in Delhi or Bombay than after it flies to Kochi or Lucknow or Amritsar, right? Knowing that, they decided that they are not going to sell engines anymore. Here is an engine maker that decided not to sell engines. What they do is actually sell engine hours, engine flying hours as a service. Airlines pay money for the hours that the engine runs and flies. So a product as old, from a company as old as Rolls-Royce, has become a service purely driven by data and the ability to manage the business based on that data. So Rolls-Royce will do all the maintenance, they will do everything, they will plan all of that based on data and get paid for the amount of hours that the airline actually flies. Here's a fundamental shift in how business is done. I'll give you another example. In finance, how many of you have heard of a company called SoFi, Social Finance? Nobody. That's probably because it's only a few years old, but there are a breed of finance companies that are trying to give loans based on social profiles of people and social behavior of people, not using things like your FICO scores or your CIBIL ratings. People are trying to figure out your creditworthiness based on who your friends are and what you do in your social life. Not everything is hunky-dory, they haven't fully cracked it, but they're well on their way. And once that happens, the need for a bank to lend goes away. The need for security, the need for guarantors, all of those things goes away. So something as old as the banking model is at risk of getting disrupted. That's in banking. In sports, there are now sensors fitted into baseballs, basketballs, shoes by Nike, the clothes that are worn by the athletes, which are measuring everything about how they move, how they accelerate, how they catch, how they throw, and they are using that to figure out how many years of active player life there is, how many years before this person has a serious injury, and that is affecting the price that people are going to pay to athletes. Tomorrow, when somebody like a Ronaldo is going to be hired by a club, they would have done a ton of analytics to figure out what is the useful life of this player based on the characteristics that he has in how he plays his sport. That is already happening. Everything that I'm talking about is already happening. In healthcare, there are sensors now in pills that after you've taken them into your body, release data about how they are getting integrated into your body before they dissolve. So the pathway that is taken for the drugs to actually get assimilated into your bloodstream and into whatever place they are supposed to go, they release data till they dissolve for a few minutes. And that data is being used to actually create customized medicines because the cost of healthcare in the US is so high. The cost of drugs is very high. So if you can actually increase the effectiveness of these drugs, that can have a huge implication on how much money is spent or saved. And again, this data collected over lots and lots of people can result in decision making. How many of you are wearing a Fitbit or a Jawbone? Any of those? That's very few. So we don't have too many health nuts in the class. Well, in different classes the numbers are different and they're higher in other classes, but in the US, of course, a lot of people are wearing these now, right? So Fitbit collects 60 years worth of sleep data in one night, and this number is about a year old. Okay, 60 years worth of sleep data is collected every night by Fitbit, and they are using that data to figure out a lot of things, right? So here is an example of something that is very harmless. You're just using that to count your steps and your calories, but Fitbit is doing something else with it. So you can imagine now, I've given you examples from a variety of areas. Let me come closer to home. When you are learning with us, you are using an LMS, you might be using our mobile app. We know every action you take. Okay? Everything that you do on the LMS is tracked. We are able to use that to predict how many of you are going to drop off. Okay? How many of you are going to fail? We are still not perfect yet, but we are planning to use that information to actually, not planning to, we are using that information to send alerts in advance saying that we think you may miss this assignment submission that's coming up in a few days. So please start working on it. Right? We are able to create profiles of ideal students based on the activities that they are taking, and we are able to correlate that to outcomes in the future. We know everything that happens to you guys thanks to LinkedIn. Okay, we know what's happening with all of our alums thanks to LinkedIn. So we are able to see their behavior during the program and correlate that to future career outcomes. Right? And we are just getting started. We will be able to correlate that with so many different things in the future. Okay? And we are planning to do a lot of things with that as well. Right? We have gamification built in. We are going to introduce game mechanics. We have already done that. Some of those things we will talk to you later, but we are tracking everything that you are doing. We haven't figured out how to do that in the classroom yet. Okay, but that will happen as well. Cameras are getting smarter and smarter. Pretty much, all the mobile devices now have the ability to look back at you and figure out what you're doing. Right? So that technology is still evolving. Soon you can imagine there are 3 or 4 cameras there that are looking at every one of you and then figuring out if you are losing interest or about to doze off, and send a vibrate to your phone. Okay? That's not a hard thing to do. In fact, one of you can take that as a project. I don't think that's a hard thing to do actually. All you have to do is get lots of pictures from Google and stuff like that and figure out, dozy pictures versus regular pictures. It's a simple machine learning problem. Right. This is all happening right now. I don't even know where this is going to go. Nobody knows where this is going to go. Okay? That's the reason you are in this class. Let me also tell you, this is changing so fast that don't assume that just because you're doing this program, you're set for life. Okay? This is just going to teach you the basic stuff, the things that you need to know, that it's going to give you a language, a set of tools, and expose you to the world that is out there. But that world is also changing fast. So for you to be current, you have to keep learning. So this is a journey. And this is only going to get you started. And you will have to keep current and up to date if you want to stay relevant and capture the advantages from what's going on. So many of our students who have done this program have been able to transition into fantastic roles in analytics. And they're working on some very, very cool things. Pretty much every company that is there now has an analytics focus or an analytics team or an analytics initiative or a big data initiative. Right? They call it by different names, but everybody has that. Right? So you can make a transition within your companies into those areas, or you can go to other companies. But opportunities are there. And unlike other degrees that you've had, this is not a theoretical exercise. The value of this experience is not in the piece of paper that you're going to get at the end of it. It's about what you've learned and which you're able to demonstrate. This is a competence-based program. You're only as valuable as what you are able to do and what you're able to demonstrate. Therefore, you don't need to actually convince anybody, or you don't need to fool anybody whether you're learning or not. It's only you. Okay? When the deadlines are coming for assignments and things like that, there will be temptation to cheat. We have seen that before. Even though many of you are substantially experienced and older, old habits will come back. So resist that. Okay? We can figure it out. And many times we have chosen to actually ignore because it's your loss. Right? We are not going to be policing you. We are not going to be, we can choose to do that, but we choose not to do. We can embarrass you in front of your class. We don't want to do that. So you're all adults and mature, so let's all be adults and be mature. If you're not able to do something and you fall behind, that's fine. You can do it again. Unlike other programs, we do not have a 40% pass mark because we found that people can actually pass without learning, and the objective here is learning. So to pass in any course here, you have to demonstrate that you actually learned it. The cutoff is 60%. And you will not get 60% unless you learn. And if you don't get it, you can do it again. There are batches starting every 6 months. Typically in every batch, about 20% of the people repeat. There's no shame in that. You're just learning. You will run into difficulties. Things may get busy at work. You may have to travel, because of which you are not able to do something, and that's okay. You just do it with the next class. There are people who have done it in the third attempt. No problem. What is important is that you learn. The second most important thing is that you create a body of work. The capstone project that you do, that is your ticket. That is the thing that you can show to the world that here is what I have done. That's where you demonstrate what you've learned. People have worked on fantastic capstone projects. When the floods in Chennai happened, somebody actually worked on the Twitter data of the floods and figured out how one can figure out the most affected areas based on Twitter traffic. Right? That was a project that people did in the last batch in Chennai. Right? There are people that worked on elections data. There are so many problems all around us that you can work on, and that forms for a very engaging and interesting discussion in an interview. That's how you get a job, by showing what you can do. So those are some of the thoughts that I wanted to share with you. Hopefully, you feel good about being here. It's not going to be easy, let me tell you again. This is all about doing. You have to do the work for you to get benefit out of it. And that's what you're signing up for. Those of you that are not prepared to do the work, or don't think you can spend the time to do the work, maybe this program is not for you. Feel free to drop out. Okay? I guarantee within another 2 years you will be back in the program, because you would have seen your colleagues actually do it and get ahead. It has happened so many times where somebody is in the class and in the next batch their boss is there. So many times. Not their colleague, their boss. I'm not going to ask, but I'm sure there are some people in the class who are vice presidents, directors, senior people, because they need to learn as well. And I applaud that. We once had the CTO of Volkswagen India in the class. This gentleman, 27 years of experience. And he sat in the class and went through the whole program. And he said, I have so much data, people are telling me all kinds of things, I don't know what to do. 27 years of experience and CTO of Volkswagen India. Respect. Right? We are all learning all the time. There are so many things that I find every day that I have no idea about. And that's the world we are in. So those are the things I wanted to share with you. I wish you all the very best. Make the most of this program. And over to Bappa now. Thank you.